Hi, and welcome back to another AnyRPG Development Livestream. In these videos, I livestream the development of the AnyRPG Engine, a free and open source role-playing game engine designed in Unity and written in C#. If you don't already have a copy of AnyRPG, you can pick one up from anyrpg.org/downloads in both Unity package and source code format. You can also find free copies of the games that I work on available for download at the same page. In this episode, we will be adding something kind of cool to our armor. We'll be adding dungeon set bonuses, and this is the first time we'll see set bonuses in this dungeon, which is the second dungeon in the game. So to do that, we'll need to add a new class into the game to keep track of that. So in our Unity project, we'll need to create an equipment set. So to do that, we'll go into the scripts directory, and under the scripts here, we've got item scripts, and we have a base class called equipment, and this is where we'll be adding them, so that way our set bonus can consist of things like rings and weapons as well. So we'll have to create the class to keep track of that, and all the classes that we're using for scriptable objects are under resource profiles here. So I'm just going to create a new resource profile, and I'm going to call it equipment set. So I'll just duplicate any old one of those, and the new one will be called equipment set. Hit F2 to rename that. The way that equipment set bonuses are going to work is they're going to be traits, basically just like the traits on the character class, which is a type of stat buff that just doesn't show up in your buff bar. So this will be new equipment set, AnyRPG equipment set. The public class name will be equipment set. By definition, the equipment set already has a name because it's a describable resource. So the only thing that we need to do is keep track of the pieces of equipment that make up this set, as well as the bonuses that we get for the set. So for the equipment, we'll need to have a list of equipment names. So we'll make a new serialized field here and make it a private list of string. And this is called equipment names. And that's going to be a new list of string. Then we will have a private list of equipment, call it equipment list, and that's a new list of equipment. So what will happen is we'll type in a list of equipment names, and when we run our setup scriptable objects, we'll map those to the equipment. We'll also need to do the same thing for basically the set bonuses. So we'll have a private list of string called trait names and a private list of string called trait list. Now, the way this one's going to work, and I'm just going to add a little comment about this, is that the name of the trait should be associated with the list spot that matches the number of gear pieces required. So to explain what that comment means, basically, this is going to be like, I mean, rather than trying to do something complicated, like make a list and say like at X number of pieces of gear, you get Y bonus, which would require me to make some sort of like node that's serializable. What I'm going to do is, let's say, for example, that on items number 2 and 5, you get a bonus. Like at 2, you get extra stam, and at 5, you get extra spell power or something. Then this list will be 5 items long, and only the second and fifth element will have names filled in. The rest will be empty to indicate there's no bonus for that. And that's just sort of a nice, simple way to do this. It doesn't allow us to give 2 separate bonuses for the same thing, but it doesn't really matter because you can have more than one ability on a trait anyway, because traits are just status effects, and you can have like every status effect in the game on a single status effect if you want. So this will work for us. And then we'll want to run a setup scriptable objects call. So you can see in the base class of equipment, we've got this setup scriptable objects call. So I'm just going to copy that. This gets automatically run on all describable resources, giving them a chance to map strings into lists of things. And we only need basically to go through and map 2 properties. So if our equipment names is not null, and our equipment names, that's actually a list, so we only need that one check there, then actually, you know what, this is a lot better because this one right here is already a list. That'll be a lot quicker. So we're just going to copy that. So equipment list is a new list of equipment, and if equipment names isn't null, then for each, and we're going to rename that field to equipment name and apply. Then we need equipment, and I'm going to rename that field to TMP equipment. We'll be grabbing the equipment from the system equipment manager based on the equipment name. If we get something back that's not null, then we're going to add it to the equipment list. Otherwise, could not find equipment while initializing this thing. And we don't have a system equipment manager yet, so we have to create one of those. Next, we'll be doing the same thing for the traits. Now this is actually a list of status effect. The trait list, new list of status effect. So let's go make our system equipment manager now. We'll go to the resources here, and we'll just copy any old resource. So we'll create the system, and in this case, we want system equipment set manager. And actually, I made a mistake in the code there. This is actually just supposed to be the system item manager because equipment is part of the item class. And what we need to do is get the equipment name and then cast it as equipment for that to work. Although we still do need this equipment set manager because we'll need to refer to the equipment set from the equipment. So I'll double click on this system equipment set manager, and we'll just need to change the name here. So system equipment set manager. We'll change the name of the singleton, fold up the singleton region, set this string here to equipment set, and then everywhere in the file where we have weapon skill, we want to change that to equipment set. That looks good. Next thing we want to do is we want to take the equipment set manager and add it to the game manager so that we are able to actually use it and refer to it. Just go to the console, make sure there's no errors. Looks good. So under the game manager here, we've got resource managers, and we'll add the system equipment set manager to that, and then added component, apply that to the game manager. Then it'll apply to not just this prefab, but the regular game manager prefab for everything. Next, we need to actually add equipment sets into the game. So to do that, under a lost soul shared, I'm going to create a new folder under the resources folder here, and it's going to be called equipment set. Currently, we've got a couple of different equipment sets. We have the Earth Dwellers cloth gear, we have the Earth Dwellers leather gear and Initiates leather gear, and the Earth Dwellers plate gear. So what we'll do is we'll make basically 3 equipment sets, and we'll call them Ancient Cloth, Ancient Leather, and Ancient Plate. So I'll create a new AnyRPG equipment set, and we'll call this one Ancient Leather. And then I will duplicate that. And duplicate it again. So we'll have Ancient Plate and Ancient Cloth. Now, just to make things simple for now, I'm actually going to apply this to the Earth Dwellers gear, because the Earth Dwellers gear I already have. So just for testing, we'll do that. So what we want is we'll have 8 equipment names, and my character is currently wearing the Earth Dwellers cloth bracers, cloth gloves, etc. So I'm just going to copy that value right there, and what we'll do is we'll go to the equipment set, Ancient Cloth, lock the inspector, call it Ancient Cloth, and then first name is Earth Dwellers Cloth Bracers. Copy that, Earth Dwellers Cloth Gloves. Copy that, Earth Dwellers Cloth Hood. Copy that, Earth Dwellers Cloth Mantle. Earth Dwellers Cloth Robes. Pants. Robe. Sash. And shoes. For the traits, what I'm going to do for now is just apply some really easy to visualize traits. So we have a trait on the warrior class. Let's just find the warrior class here. And the warrior gets tough as nails for a trait. You know what I'm thinking? Actually, maybe the traits from the ranger or fighter are going to be better. Yeah, let's give speed of the wolf, because that'll be really apparent. And then we'll give quick reflexes as well. So we'll give speed of the wolf and quick reflexes. So going back to the equipment set, ancient cloth here. We'll add 5 traits. This one will be quick reflexes, and this one will be speed of the wolf. So what that means basically is that when you get 2 pieces, you'll have quick reflexes, and when you get 5 pieces, you'll have speed of the wolf. That's pretty much all we need to add to the equipment set class. So now what we want to do is make sure that our equipment can refer to equipment sets as well. So equipment can only belong to a single equipment set. So this will be actually not a private list of a string, a string. And the string will be equipment set name. And we'll just make it string.empty by default. So then when we initialize our equipment in setup scriptable objects, we'll just make a reference to an actual equipment set. So we need to actually make a variable to track that. So we also need a private equipment set, which will also be null by default. So equipment set will be set to null, and then if equipment set name doesn't equal null, and equipment set name doesn't equal string.empty, then we'll look for this equipment set, call this TMP equipment set, and we'll grab it from the equipment set manager based on the equipment set name. If that new piece of equipment set isn't null, then we will set our actual equipment set to it. Otherwise, we'll log an error. And equipment set is not a required type, so we don't need that. And couldn't find equipment set name while initializing this piece of gear. Okay, good. So then let's see. So next we need a way to actually apply these equipment set bonuses to the character. So we will want to do that when the character removes or puts on armor, and that is done in the equipment manager. So when we put equipment on, let's see here. There's a point where we put it on and we basically check for abilities that need to be learned. Here we go, equip. So this is actually in the on equipment changed call. So what happens is we put on the equipment and we make this call, which is actually listened to by the character ability manager. And we subscribe to it with this handle equipment changed method. So we'll go to the definition of that. And here we're basically going through and unlearning abilities that belong to the old item. And this is where we would want to basically perform our check in this method right here. So to do that, let's just make a comment here. After equipment change, check all equipment sets and bonuses. And we'll actually need a totally new method to do that. So the way that we currently learn traits right now is through changing character class. And we have this handle class change method that we're calling, which removes class traits and applies new class traits. So we want to do basically something like that. So the new method will actually be, let's see, update equipment traits. And it doesn't even need anything else. So this is going to be a public virtual void update equipment traits. And let's see, we're going to look at the code for the class traits here and just see how it's done. So essentially, we're just running a for each loop and applying the status effect. So we're going to want to do something like this at the end of this method. But first, we're going to want to go make a list of basically every equipment set that the character has in his equipped equipment, and then basically loop through those and figure out whether they have enough gear to have those traits applied. Then we will check if those traits are not already applied, and then apply them. So to do that, we'll want to create a new list, and this will be called the unique equipment sets list. And this is a list of equipment set. And then we want to basically loop through everything in the character equipment manager. So let's see. Actually, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking maybe I'll just actually structure this like the way that the regular equipment change happens, because that way I don't actually have to have a reference back to the character equipment manager. Let's just let's try that out actually. Yeah. So in here we're going to be doing unlearn. Actually, no, you know what? We actually do need a reference to the character equipment manager, because no matter what, we need to query the character equipment manager. But I guess it's still better to do it on unlearn. Yeah, okay. Let's just try it this way for now. So in this case, it'll be old item. So we will be accepting the equipment old item. And if our old item dot, and now we need to actually go and expose the equipment set. So quick actions and refactoring, encapsulate field, just set the name on it here. So if the old item dot my equipment set is null, then we can just return because there's nothing to do. If the, actually if we got past here, we know it wasn't null. So then what we want to do basically is let's see, we want to basically check the set bonuses and whether or not the character still should get them. So the character ability manager is going to have to query the character's equipment manager. And we have a reference back to the base character, so that is something that we can do. So let's make a new integer and call it the equipment count and set it to 0 by default. Then if the base character does not equal null and the base character dot character equipment manager does not equal null, then what we want to do is loop through the base character dot my character equipment manager dot my current equipment so I put that stuff in the wrong order there. Okay, that's better. My current equipment is a dictionary of equipment slot profile equipment. So in this case, we just want values. And then if the check the equipment. So if the TMP equipment dot my equipment set does not equal null, and the TMP equipment dot my equipment set is equal to old item dot my equipment set, then we're going to increment the equipment count. So now after the end of that loop, we know how many pieces of equipment we have. Then what we want to do is we want to basically figure out whether the character has the right traits applied for the amount of equipment that he has. So to do that, we need a for loop. We'll start at I is 0. I is less than the, oh, right. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, we will loop through the old item dot my equipment set dot, and then we need to actually expose the trait list here. So quick actions and refactoring, encapsulate field, expose the trait list. So while I is less than the count of the trait list, we'll set I++, and then what we want to do is basically use this I value as the count for the number of pieces of gear that we need for the particular trait. So the trait that we'll be working with which is a status effect. We'll need a reference to that. So status effect equals old item.myEquipmentSet.myTraitList I. And now we have a reference to the status effect. If we basically want to check if the character now has enough pieces of equipment to use this status effect. So if the status effect is not null, and actually what I realized here is that we actually need to add stuff to the list regardless of whether or not it's null, and this code here isn't exactly doing that. So here we'll want to set this to null originally. Then we'll want to basically say if equipment name equals string .empty, then we want to just equipment list.add, and we'll add a null value into that spot in the equipment list. Otherwise, we want to do the rest of this stuff. So basically what this will do is, if we got no name, then it's just a null. If it does have a name, then that name needs to be spelled right, and therefore we need to perform that check. Okay, good. So now we'll actually properly have empty slots in our list here. So then, if the status effect is not null, then we need to do this next check. And this check is if the character has enough equipment. So basically, if equipment count is greater than I, it needs to be greater than I because I is one less than the actual equipment count. So my equipment count is 1, then I'm able to get index 0. So it has to be greater, basically. And that means essentially they've matched. So if equipment count is greater than I, then we are allowed to have this buff. Else, we are not allowed to have this buff. So now what we need to do is basically check, do we have the buff? If so, or if not, we need to actually cast it. So to do that, we need to actually query character stats. And let's see, if base character.my character stats.my, and we actually have our buffs exposed somewhere here. I think my status effects. And status effect is a list of string and status effect nodes, and the string is the name of the status effect. So if our my status effects dot contains key, and the key is the status effect dot my name, and here we actually need to do some prep to the key. And I believe the call I need to do is the system resource manager dot prepare string for match on that one. Okay, so if our status effects contains the key, basically the lowercase string removed name of the status effect, and we want that to be a not, then we want to actually cast it. So all we need to do is just call this apply status effect code, or yep, which we'll apply the status effect right here. Okay, otherwise, we'll basically do the exact reverse. If we are not allowed to have the buff, then if our status effects list contains that, then I believe we want to remove, let's just go to apply status effect there. We have apply class traits and remove class traits. Under remove class traits, we're actually not calling an apply status effect, we're just calling a remove status effect. So we'll just use basically that exact same code. And call status effect.myname.cancel status effects. Okay, so this is actually, let's see. This code, just looking at the way that it's written right here, will basically work for both the learn and unlearn equipment traits, pretty much. So this doesn't even have to be old item, it just has to be equipment. Because basically, if we put something new on, it's just going to go through and check all the traits, and if we take something old off, it's going to go and check all the traits. That is precisely what we need to do in both cases. So what will happen here is we'll just call this update equipment traits twice. We will call it with the old item, and then we'll call it again with a new item. Okay, so that, I think, should handle the case of what to do with the equipment traits. So the next thing that we need to do is on our equipment has a method when we mouse over to give some information in a pop-up here, and we'll need to actually add that information. So if our equipment set does not equal null, then we'll actually want to print that. And I know this is saying abilities list here, but honestly this is actually just the string for the list of stuff that's going to be put on the mouse over. So in this case we want to do like basically the equipment set name. So let's do that in sort of like a yellow color. So we'll do color equals yellow, and then the name of the equipment set. And then we'll need to actually check how many pieces of the equipment set the character has equipped, but I'll do that after. For now, I think it'll be good enough just to put that on. And then we need to go through the equipment set and list all of the equipment. So to do that, we can do a for each loop. And we'll do for each equipment in our equipment set.my, and we haven't actually exposed the equipment list yet, so we're going to do quick actions and refactoring, encapsulate field, and expose the equipment list. And then we'll just be adding that equipment's name. And I can't remember if Unity, I think Unity accepts both gray and gray. I think we'll find out here in a sec. And in this case, we want the equipment.myname displayed. So then the next thing that we want to do after we've displayed all the pieces of gear in it is display the set bonuses. So to do that, we'll need a for loop, and here I is 0 and I is less than the equipment let's see, actually this needs to go after that first loop. And this is the equipment set.myTraitList.count. And then we want to basically add the traits. So we need to do an if check first and basically say if, and in this case, we're going to check if our equipment set.myTraitList on our current index of I does not equal null. Then we want to do something about it. And for now, color is gray is fine. We're going to make some brackets here, and we're going to have basically the index of I, and then we're going to do a description basically. So the first value here is going to be I plus 1, because the number of set pieces is going to be 1 greater than that index number there. Then the second piece of information that we need is to tell us what the actual description is. So to do that, we have equipment set.myTraitListI dot, and then we'll need to make a call to basically get a description. Now we have a get description method, but this isn't what we're going to be calling, because this is the same basically get description as this. We want a slightly different one. So I think we want to call get summary, because that doesn't have the name in it. And get summary. Okay. Here, we're actually linking to resource profile.getDescription, and that's actually not what we want. We want status effect.getDescription. Or more specifically, get summary. I think I just need to look for the status effect class directly. Okay, there we go, that's better. So in the status effect class, somewhere we've got a method which is going to tell us all about this thing, what it does. So it is definitely the get summary method, I think, that we want to call here, because it's going to tell us increases, reduces, and all that other stuff. Okay, definitely. Okay, so we're just going to call get summary on it. All right, so now we should be able to have a mouse over that tells us all of these abilities. I want to actually just test if this much is working right now. So we'll let the thing compile. And press play, make sure everything. You know what I forgot to do? I actually forgot to assign the equipment set to the equipment. I also forgot to change the name on the ancient plate, because those names have to be unique. So we'll save that, and then the equipment set is called ancient cloth, so I'm just going to copy that name, and then we need to actually go down into the earth dwellers stuff here and set the equipment set name to ancient cloth. And save that, and then let's press play again. And we'll load up our any one of our chapter 2 testers here. And we've got a null reference issue. And basically that's because if equipment equals null, or the equipment.equipment set equals null, we need to just return. Okay, so I can see the ancient cloth right there, and I can see all of the pieces of that set. It looks like gray is not a valid color the way that I spelled it. However, what I don't see is the actual set bonus effects for that. So that's a good start. We can make a few changes here. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to actually just add a line break before the name of the piece of equipment. Then I think we just want to change that to gray, G-R-E-Y. And let's save that. And then I want to see whether or not we have those pieces of gear on. So let's do that. Basically, this color is now going to be a variable. And we can have string color name equals gray. And we want to check basically if the character has this piece of equipment equipped. So to do that, we need to go to the player manager.myInstance.myCharacter.myCurrentEquipment. And actually, let's see what methods this thing has exposed, because I think, yeah, we have a has equipment method already. That's actually what we want. We want to know if the character has the equipment based on the equipment name here. So if he does, then we're going to set the color name equal to white, I think. Yeah. You know what? Actually, why don't we set it to yellow just for fun? Okay. And then next up for this one, I think I need to throw a debug in there because we should have seen the abilities there. And the reason that we didn't is because I didn't do the initialization on them. So our trait list is a new list of status effects. And actually, you know what I realized? I realized this equipment code here is what the status effect code was supposed to be. Okay, so basically we're going to get a status effect, and we're going to rename that TMP status effect. And if our trait names is not null, then we're going to rename that to trait name. If the trait name is string.empty, then we're just going to add it directly to the trait list. For the equipment, we don't need to perform this at all. We just need to do this the normal way like that. And I can just do Control K, Control F to fix the formatting there. So our status effect is going to get from the System Ability Effect Manager. And we're going to be grabbing based off the trait name, and we're going to be returning it as a status effect, and then adding it to the trait list. Otherwise, could not find status effect trait name while initializing this piece of equipment. Okay, that should allow us to properly show the abilities. Now, what I want to do again is I want to make a string color name equals, and in this case we're going to start with gray also. Then what we want to do is check how many pieces of equipment the character has equipped that are part of this particular equipment set. Now we already did the code for that in the other method, so I think we can basically just publicly expose that and wrap it inside of its own method here. So in the character equipment manager, actually we're doing this in the character ability manager. So what we want to do, I think, is copy this code and move it to the character equipment manager. And pass in the equipment set. So we'll make a public virtual void get equipment set count, passing in the equipment set. We don't need to do that check because we're already in the equipment manager. Here we can just directly interrogate my current equipment.values. here, we're just looking directly for the equipment set that was passed in. And then this is actually a public virtual int, not void. Let's Control KF to fix the formatting on that. And now we can call getEquipmentSetCount. So going back to the character ability manager here, we can basically just change this up. So if the base character and the base character.myCharacterEquipmentManager does not equal null, then equipment count equals base character.myCharacterEquipmentManager dot getEquipmentSetCount based on the equipment.equipmentSet. Now that we have that common method exposed, we can get the count of the equipment. So int equipment count is getEquipmentSetCount for the equipment set. Now we can finally perform our check and see if our equipment count is greater than I, because I is 0 when equipment count is 1, so it needs to be greater, then our color name is equal to green. And here, we need to actually change that. So this is going to become 0. This is going to become 1. This is going to become 2. And this is going to become color name. Okay, so now we should be able to properly show not only do we have the gear equipped or not, but also what set bonuses our character should have as a result of this. Let's just let that compile, make sure that the code's okay. And press play. I'll load up my tester over here. Nice. So the ancient cloth set here, I need to put actually that number beside the name, but I am pretty happy with that so far. And I also need to remove the extra spaces in between. Let's see, and I also want to put some spaces at the beginning here. So let's fix the formatting on this a little bit. We have too many extra returns in the first ability for some reason. right here, we want to have two values. We want to have the current number and the total number. We'll get the equipment count a lot earlier here. So the equipment count is going to be the current number, and then the total number is going to be the equipment set dot my equipment list dot count. When we're displaying these things right here, I actually want a little space, maybe 2, so that they're indented slightly. And before the trait list, I actually just want to add a blank line, and to do that, I think I can just write it like that. Now, as for why one of those descriptions had some extra new lines in it, I think that was the quick reflexes ability. Let's just save that and then jump back into the game, take a look at it. And see if I can figure out what's going on with the extra lines in the status effects part of it. Okay, that's a lot better. I'm now showing Ancient Cloth 7 out of 8. The things are indented. You can see the one in gray, the rest of them in yellow. There's a new line before fast reflexes increase attack speed, but there are 2 extra new lines after that as well. And we don't want those 2 extra new lines. So there's something going on with the quick reflexes get summary, which is causing extra lines to be inserted. Also, this value right here in the name, I want that to also be yellow. So we want to do the /color tag after it. So let's go take a look at status effect and look at its get summary method. Because I want to figure out where those extra new lines are coming from. We've got a hard-coded /n in here before duration label. So I think what we want to do basically is put the /n You know what? I bet you, even if we don't have a duration label, no, you know what? Duration label is only going to be printed, or status text, if we have a duration label. So I think we can do a little bit better of a check here. We'll make a new string called duration string, for lack of a better idea. And basically, if the duration label does not equal string.empty, as it would if we didn't have a duration on the spell, then we can take all this stuff right here let's see, and basically go duration string equals /n plus duration label plus status text. And then we can remove that /n right here, just have one, and the entire parameter is the duration string. And the duration string should be up there. Okay, that should get rid of the new line if there's no duration on it. Now let's take a look. We've got another /n right here on description final. Let's just see if that change that I just made makes a difference, and we'll see if there's another extra new line remaining or whether that fixed it. Okay. That's not bad. I can see basically that extra new line, yeah, that's definitely still an issue. So we'll want to fix that. Essentially, what happened with that extra new line is that the increased attack speed is not part of this check right here. And that's just basically because these are all things which we're manually putting in for effects. So what we'll want to do is basically the same thing. We have description final. I think what we can do is we'll just make it a string.empty. And if our effect strings.count is greater than 0, Then we'll perform the join with an extra /n in front of it. Then description final will have the /n inside of it, or it'll be an empty string. And that should get rid of that one extra new line there. And then in our equipment, where we're displaying the armor type, which is actually in the armor class, I feel like we need one extra return before that because it's like just stuffed below the ability list here. Either that, or we could just naturally put another return after this stuff. So I think I'll do that. Essentially, if the trait list.count is greater than 0, then you added some traits. It doesn't make sense for anybody to add a whole pile of empty traits, so that list would be 0 otherwise. So essentially, we can basically just do an if statement here and say, if the count is greater than 0, then we're going to abilities list.add one empty string at the end of it. Let's save that, jump back into the game. Okay, perfect. Absolutely perfect. We have a space between those things and the word cloth, so now we can tell that that's basically not part of that. We've got the proper list of amount of set pieces. We've got the proper traits. Now if I look at my movement speed, I'm 8.4 meters per second, which means that I most definitely have speed of the wolf applied. So let's check and reduce our set to 4 pieces of equipped gear. So I'm going to take the gloves, and no reference. All right. Okay, so basically, if our equipment set does not equal null, because I'm willing to bet we... actually, maybe that wasn't the equipment set. So the line that we got the null reference on was here. Yeah, okay, it probably is that one then. Null equipment set. So basically, if equipment set does not equal null, then we can do this. Otherwise, we'll of course just be returning safely 0. Let that compile and try to make sure that we can unequip our gear without crashing. No. You know what? My current equipment is a list of equipment slot profiles, in which case any piece of that can actually be null as well. So we need to check that TMP equipment does not equal null first, because my current equipment will always have all possible equipment slots, whether or not they have something in it. Okay, try that one more time. Yeah, there we go, that's better. All right, cool. And now we can see that we've got 6 out of 8 equipped, and it's properly showing that piece is not equipped here. So we'll take off the belt, take off the pants, and now fast as a wolf has gone away. It's gray. Our movement speed is reduced to 7%, which is our base movement speed. Ladies and gentlemen, I would say that we have successfully implemented set bonuses for our characters. I'm pretty happy with that. I've been wanting to add that feature for quite some time now. That is absolutely awesome that it works and it was that simple. So, as always, I hope you enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun to make. And if you did, don't forget to thumbs up the video, subscribe to the AnyRPG YouTube channel, or just leave a note in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.